I wasn't supposed to cry at Sarah's wedding. But when I overheard them laughing about how I looked in my bridesmaid dress, something inside me shattered in a way I wasn't prepared for. The June heat in Charleston was suffocating, the kind that makes your skin stick to everything. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite at the Magnolia Plantation, tugging at the sage green dress that clung to every curve, every roll, every part of me I'd learned to apologize for without saying a word. "Does it fit?" Sarah's voice came from behind me, soft but pointed. I forced a smile. "It's perfect." It wasn't. The dress was a size too small. I'd told her my measurements 3 times, but somehow the dress that arrived was tailored for someone else. Someone smaller, someone more acceptable. "You look beautiful," she said, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. Sarah had been my best friend since college. We'd shared dorm rooms, late-night confessions, dreams about futures we'd build together. But somewhere between graduation and her engagement to Marcus, a successful corporate lawyer with a family that summered in the Hamptons, things shifted. I became the friend she kept at arm's length, the one who didn't quite fit into her new life. The other bridesmaids filed in, a parade of Pilates bodies and perfectly highlighted hair. Jennifer, who worked in PR. Ashley, Marcus's cousin who modeled part-time. And Brittany, Sarah's college roommate, who always looked at me like I was a problem she couldn't solve. "Oh, wow," Brittany said when she saw me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "That dress is brave." Jennifer stifled a laugh. Ashley turned away, but I caught the smirk. "I think she looks lovely," Sarah said, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was the kind of defense that feels worse than silence. The ceremony was in an hour. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing air, needing space, needing to remember why I agreed to this in the first place. The venue was stunning. White chairs arranged in perfect rows facing an oak tree draped in Spanish moss and fairy lights. The kind of wedding you see in magazines, the kind I used to dream about before I learned that dreams have weight limits. I could hear voices from the bridal suite as I stood in the hallway. "I don't know why Sarah asked her to be a bridesmaid," Brittany's voice carried through the crack in the door. "She's going to ruin all the photos." "Maybe she'll stand in the back," Jennifer said. "She takes up too much space even in the back." They laughed, not loud, but enough. Enough to confirm what I'd always suspected, that I was tolerated, not celebrated, that my presence was an inconvenience. I pressed my back against the wall, steadying my breath. The medical alert bracelet on my wrist felt heavy. I'd been wearing it for 6 months since the diagnosis, since the treatment started, since my body began betraying me in ways that showed on the outside but originated deep within. Nobody asked why I'd gained weight. Nobody asked why I looked tired. Nobody asked anything at all. I returned to the suite with a smile that hurt my face. The ceremony proceeded exactly as planned. I walked down the aisle, feeling every eye on me, every judgment, every unspoken thought. I stood where I was told to stand, smiled when I was told to smile, and pretended I didn't notice Marcus's mother lean over to whisper something to her husband while looking directly at me. The reception was held in a glass pavilion overlooking the Ashley River. Golden hour light streamed through the windows, making everything look like a painting. Round tables with ivory linens, centerpieces of garden roses and eucalyptus, a live band playing jazz standards. I was seated at table 7, far from the main action, next to Sarah's elderly aunt who was hard of hearing and a couple I'd never met. I picked at my food, watching Sarah and Marcus dance, watching everyone celebrate a love that looked perfect from a distance. "Excuse me." I looked up to find Marcus's best man, Tyler, standing beside me. He was tall, conventionally attractive, the kind of man who'd never known what it felt like to be invisible. "Can I sit?" he asked. I nodded, confused. He settled into the chair beside me, loosening his tie. "Hell of a wedding, huh?" "It's beautiful," I said carefully. "You're Emma, right? Sarah's friend from college?" "That's me." He studied me for a moment. "You don't look like you're having fun." I laughed, a hollow sound. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. There was no mockery there, no hidden agenda, just genuine observation. Weddings are complicated, I said finally, especially when you're the one everyone's whispering about. My throat tightened. You heard them. I've been hearing them all day. My sister does the same thing. She thinks if she says cruel things quietly enough, they don't count as cruelty. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with unexpected kindness. The band transitioned into something upbeat. Bodies filled the dance floor. Tyler stood, extending his hand. Dance with me. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I'll be judged. Because people will stare. Because I'm not supposed to take up space, especially not on a dance floor at a wedding where I'm already the visual outlier. Because I'm tired, I said instead. He didn't push. Just nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my shame. If you're still with me, please hit that subscribe button and comment below telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story reaches, because what happens next changes everything. The night wore on like a slow bruise forming. I watched Sarah cut the cake, her laugh bright and performance perfect. I watched the bouquet toss, where single women gathered like it was some kind of prize. I stayed seated, invisible by choice this time. Around 10 p.m., I stepped outside onto the veranda. The Carolina night air was thick and sweet, carrying the scent of Confederate jasmine. Cicadas hummed their endless song. The river beyond reflected moonlight in fractured pieces. I leaned against the railing, closing my eyes, trying to remember a version of myself that didn't feel like an apology. There you are. I turned to find Sarah approaching, her veil removed, hair slightly undone from dancing. She looked radiant. She looked like someone whose biggest problem was choosing between honeymoon destinations. Hey, I said. Beautiful wedding. Thank you for being here, she said, but there was something rehearsed about it. I know it's been hard lately, between us. Has it? She flinched. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend everything's fine when it's not. You've been distant for months. The audacity of it took my breath away. I'd been distant, as if I was the one who stopped returning calls, as if I was the one who uninvited her from my life piece by piece. I've been dealing with some things, I said carefully. Like what? Because you never tell me anything anymore. You just withdrew. The medical alert bracelet felt like it was burning my skin. 6 months of chemotherapy. 6 months of steroids that bloated my face and body. 6 months of fighting something I couldn't control while watching my so-called best friend plan a wedding I was only included in out of obligation. I didn't think you'd notice, I said quietly. That's not fair. Isn't it? Sarah's expression hardened. You know what? I've tried. I've really tried with you, but you make it so difficult. You show up to my wedding with this attitude, barely participating, making everyone uncomfortable. Making everyone uncomfortable? The words came out sharper than I intended. Is that what I'm doing? Emma, come on. The dress doesn't fit properly. You've been sulking all night. I asked you to be part of the most important day of my life, and you can't even pretend to be happy for me. Something cracked inside me then, not loudly, quietly, the way glass breaks underwater. You're right, I said. I should go. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. You'll enjoy the rest of your night more without me here. Trust me. I walked back inside before she could respond, grabbed my purse from table 7, headed toward the exit. Tyler caught me near the door. Leaving already? I don't feel well. He studied my face. Did something happen? Nothing that matters. Emma, please, I said, and my voice cracked despite my best efforts. I just need to go. He stepped aside, but pressed something into my hand. A business card. If you need someone to talk to, no judgment, just if you need it. I looked down at the card. Tyler Chen, crisis counselor, Charleston Mental Health Services. You're a therapist? among other things, and I recognize someone carrying weight that has nothing to do with their body. Tears burned behind my eyes. I nodded once and left before they could fall. The Uber ride back to my hotel room was a blur. I kicked off my shoes, unzipped the dress that had felt like punishment all day, and stood in front of the mirror in my underwear. My body told a story. Scars from port placement, bruises from blood draws, swelling from medications designed to save my life while destroying my sense of self. Every mark was evidence of a war I was fighting alone. I picked up my phone, scrolled through the photos Sarah had already posted. The ceremony, the first dance, group shots of the bridesmaids laughing together. I wasn't in any of them, cropped out or carefully positioned behind someone else. Erased. A text came through from my mother. "How's the wedding, honey?" I stared at it for a long time. My mother didn't know about the diagnosis. Nobody in my family did, Emily. I'd made the decision early to fight this privately, to not burden anyone with worry, to handle it the way I handled everything else in my life. Quietly, without complaint, without taking up too much space. "It was fine," I typed back. "Heading home tomorrow." Another text appeared. This one from an unknown number. "This is Tyler. I hope you made it back safely. If you need anything, I mean it. No pressure." I shouldn't respond. I should maintain my distance, protect myself from more disappointment. But something about his kindness earlier felt genuine in a way I hadn't experienced in months. "Thank you," I wrote. "I'm okay." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "You don't have to be okay all the time, just so you know." I set the phone down and climbed into bed, still wearing my medical alert bracelet, still carrying the weight of everything unsaid. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. My heart raced as I scrolled through them. Something had happened, something big. The messages were from Sarah, from other bridesmaids, from people I hadn't heard from in years, all saying variations of the same thing. Is it true? Oh my God, Emma, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? I'm so sorry. My hands shook as I opened Instagram. Sarah's wedding hashtag was trending locally, but it wasn't filled with photos of the ceremony or the reception. It was filled with a video. A video of me and Sarah on the veranda. Someone had filmed our conversation through a window. The audio was muffled but clear enough. Her accusing me of having an attitude, of making people uncomfortable, of ruining her perfect day. And then, clear as anything, my voice. "I have stage 3 cancer, Sarah. I've been in treatment for 6 months. The dress doesn't fit because the steroids made me gain 40 pounds. I'm not sulking. I'm exhausted from pretending to be okay while my body tries to kill me. But you're right. I should go. Because God forbid I make anyone uncomfortable at your perfect wedding." I didn't remember saying those words, but there they were, recorded and shared and now viewed by thousands of people. The video ended with me walking away and Sarah standing frozen, her face a portrait of shock and dawning horror. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think Sarah should do next. Should she reach out? Would you forgive her? Let me know your thoughts below. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at my phone like it was a weapon that had just gone off in my hands. The video had over 50,000 views. Comments poured in by the minute, a cascade of judgment, sympathy, and rage directed at Sarah, at the wedding guests, at everyone who treated me like an inconvenience. Someone had created the hashtag #BoschJustice4Emma. Another person dug up Sarah's social media and flooded her comments. The internet had done what it does best, turned a private moment of pain into public spectacle. I felt sick. This wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted to weaponize my illness. I never wanted to humiliate Sarah the way I'd been humiliated. I just wanted to leave quietly, to preserve whatever dignity I had left. My phone rang. Sarah's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. It rang again and again. 7 times in 10 minutes. Finally, a text. "Emma, please. I need to talk to you. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Please call me back. I turned off my phone. I checked out of the hotel early, drove the 3 hours back to my apartment in Colombia with the radio off, the silence thick enough to suffocate in. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, heat mirages making the asphalt shimmer like water. When I got home, my cat Milo greeted me with his usual indifference, weaving between my legs only because his food bowl was empty. I fed him, then collapsed on the couch, still wearing yesterday's makeup, still feeling the ghost of that dress constricting my ribs. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Friend requests from strangers. News outlets asking for interviews. A producer from a morning show wanted me to share my story on national television. Delete, delete, delete. But one message stopped me. From Tyler. I saw what happened. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. If you need someone who understands the weight of unwanted attention, I'm here. No agenda, just support. I read it 3 times before responding. How did you deal with it when people made your private pain public? The response came quickly. I learned that I couldn't control the narrative, only how I showed up in it. And I learned to lean on people who saw me, not just my story. Who saw you? People who asked how I was doing and actually waited for the real answer. People who sat with me in the hard parts without trying to fix them. People who didn't make me perform okayness for their comfort. I realized I couldn't name a single person in my life who did that. Not Sarah. Not my parents who I'd kept in the dark. Not the friends who'd slowly faded when I became less fun, less available, less the person they wanted me to be. Can we talk? I typed. Like, actually talk? Call me, he wrote back and included his number. We talked for 2 hours. Tyler told me about his sister's battle with alcoholism, how he'd watched their family enable her while simultaneously rejecting her. How he'd become a crisis counselor because he understood what it meant to be drowning while everyone around you debated whether you deserved a life raft. I told him about the diagnosis. Stage 3 breast cancer at 31. About the lumpectomy that became a mastectomy. About the chemotherapy that ravaged my body while I tried to maintain some semblance of normal. About choosing to suffer alone because asking for help felt like admitting defeat. Why didn't you tell anyone? He asked, and there was no judgment in the question, only genuine curiosity. Because I didn't want to become my cancer, I said. I didn't want every conversation to revolve around it. I didn't want the pity, the awkward silences, the way people look at you like you're already gone. So you became invisible instead. The accuracy of it stung. Yeah, I guess I did. And Sarah? Why not tell her? I was quiet for a long moment, watching Milo clean his paws with meticulous attention. Because somewhere between her engagement and the wedding, I realized she didn't actually want to know. She wanted the version of me that fit into her perfect life. And sick, swollen, struggling, Emma didn't fit that picture. That must have been lonely. It was. It is. You know the video's probably the best thing that could have happened, right? I bristled. How is public humiliation the best thing? Because now you don't have to carry it alone. Now the people who should have been paying attention have no choice but to see you, really see you. That's terrifying, I know, but it's also freeing. It doesn't feel freeing. It feels like being exposed. Give it time, he said gently. And Emma? You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to exist in your full, complicated, messy humanity without apologizing for it. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking. Opening. Like a door I'd kept locked, finally giving way. 3 days after the wedding, Sarah showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway holding a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, not roses like she usually bought for herself. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, eyes red from crying. I considered not answering, considered letting her stand there until she gave up and left. But something in me, maybe Tyler's words, maybe exhaustion, maybe a small, stubborn hope, made me open the door. "Emma," she breathed, and her voice broke on my name. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you, to tell you—" She stopped, tears spilling over. "God, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." I didn't invite her in, just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting. "I was a terrible friend," she continued. "Worse than terrible. I was cruel. I was so caught up in the wedding, in making everything perfect, that I completely missed what you were going through. And then that conversation on the veranda. Emma, the things I said to you were true," I said flatly. "From your perspective, anyway." "No, they weren't true. They were cruel. And I said them because I was angry that you weren't playing along with my fantasy. I wanted you to smile and be grateful and not complicate my perfect day with your actual feelings." "That's disgusting. I'm disgusting." "You're not disgusting. You're just human, selfishly human." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't." "Emma, please." "You can't fix it because it's not broken, Sarah. It's just over. The friendship we had doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it never really did. Maybe I was just convenient until I wasn't." "That's not true. I love you. You're my best friend." "When?" I asked quietly. "When was I your best friend? When did you show up for me? When did you ask how I was doing and actually listen to the answer? When did you notice I was dying, Sarah?" She sobbed openly now, mascara-less tears streaming down her face. "I should have noticed. I should have asked. I should have been there." "Yeah, you should have." We stood there in painful silence, the weight of all the unsaid things finally spoken settling between us like debris. "The video's everywhere," she finally said. "People are calling me a monster. They're calling Marcus's family elitist trash. They're sending death threats to the wedding venue. It's a nightmare." Part of me felt bad for her. Part of me felt nothing at all. "I didn't leak it," I said. "I know. Tyler found out who did. Some guest who overheard us and thought they were doing you a favor by exposing me." "Some favor." "Emma, I know I don't deserve to ask you this, but is there any way we can fix this? Any way you could forgive me?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the friend who'd once stayed up all night helping me study for finals. Who'd held my hair back when I was sick from too much cheap vodka. Who'd promised we'd be at each other's weddings, no matter what. But I also saw the woman who'd ordered a bridesmaid dress too small. Who'd defended me with no conviction. Who'd been more concerned about her wedding photos than my well-being. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Right now I need space. I need time. And I need you to understand that your guilt doesn't get to rush my healing." She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Okay, I understand. I'll give you space. But Emma, I'm not giving up on us. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm going to show you, through actions, not words, that I can be the friend you needed me to be." "We'll see," I said, and gently closed the door. "Would you give Sarah a second chance? Or are some betrayals unforgivable? Comment your honest thoughts below. I read every single one." The weeks following Sarah's visit were strange. The video eventually stopped trending, replaced by whatever fresh outrage the internet found next. But the aftermath lingered like smoke after a fire. You couldn't see it clearly anymore, but you could still smell it, still feel it coating everything. My oncologist, Dr. Patel, noticed the change immediately at my next appointment. "You look different," she said, studying me over her glasses as I sat on the examination table in one of those humiliating paper gowns. "Different bad or different good?" "Just different. Lighter, somehow." I thought about that word. Lighter. Not in weight. The steroids were still doing their job there. But lighter in the way a secret stops being heavy once you finally tell it. "I stopped hiding," I said simply. She smiled, that warm smile that had gotten me through some of my darkest moments. "Good. Hiding takes energy you need for healing. The scans that day showed progress. The tumor markers were down. My body, despite being put through hell, was responding to treatment. For the first time in 6 months, Dr. Patel used the word optimistic. I cried in the parking lot of the cancer center, sitting in my car with the AC blasting, ugly crying the way you do when relief and grief show up at the same time. Relief that I might survive this. Grief for the 6 months I'd spent believing I had to survive it alone. Tyler and I started meeting for coffee once a week. Nothing romantic. He made that clear early on, and I was grateful for it. I didn't need complicated. I needed steady. I needed someone who saw me as a whole person, not just a cancer patient or a viral video or a cautionary tale. We met at a small cafe in 5 Points, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. He always ordered black coffee. I always got a chai latte with oat milk, one of the few things that didn't make me nauseous. "How's the rage?" he asked one morning, 3 weeks after the wedding. I laughed. "The rage?" "Yeah. The anger you're allowed to feel, but probably aren't letting yourself feel." I stirred my chai, watching the foam swirl into abstract patterns. "I'm working on it." That's therapist speak for I'm still stuffing it down. Fine. I'm furious. Happy? Getting there. What are you furious about? Everything. I'm furious that I got cancer at 31. I'm furious that I felt like I had to hide it. I'm furious at Sarah for being so blind. I'm furious at myself for making myself small to fit into other people's comfort zones. I'm furious that my body betrayed me and then became something people felt entitled to comment on. That's a lot of fury. Yeah, well, turns out I've been collecting it for a while. Tyler leaned back in his chair, studying me with that calm, assessing look he had. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've spent your whole life trying to be easy to love. Trying to be low maintenance, uncomplicated, convenient. And when you got sick, when you became high maintenance by default, you couldn't handle the idea of being difficult, so you just removed yourself. The accuracy of it knocked the air from my lungs. That's uncomfortably insightful. It's my job. Also, I did the same thing when my marriage fell apart. Convinced myself that if I just needed less, hurt less visibly, I'd be easier to stick around for. Did it work? No. She still left. Turned out the problem wasn't how much space I took up. It was that I was taking up space in the wrong person's life. We sat with that for a moment, the cafe humming with morning conversation around us. "Sarah keeps texting," I said finally. "What does she say?" "Nothing dramatic. Just checking in, asking how I'm doing, sharing random things like she used to. She sent me a meme yesterday about hospital coffee. How does that make you feel?" "Confused, angry, a little hopeful, which makes me angrier." "Why does hope make you angry?" "Because I don't want to forgive her. She doesn't deserve it." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Forgiveness isn't about what people deserve, Emma. It's about what you need. If forgiving her sets you free, do it. If holding on to the anger protects you right now, do that. But don't make yourself small again just to make reconciliation easier for her." My mother called that afternoon. She rarely called, usually just texted, so I knew something was up. "Emma Louise," she said, using my full name like I was 12 again. "Why am I finding out from Barbara Hutchins at book club that you have cancer?" My stomach dropped. "Mom, Barbara showed me a video from a wedding where you're telling someone you've been in treatment for 6 months. 6 months, Emma. And you didn't tell me? I didn't want to worry you." "Well, I'm worried now. I'm your mother." "I should have been there. Your father should have been there. How could you go through something like this alone?" The anger in her voice was really fear. I could hear it underneath, the terror of almost losing a child without even knowing they were sick. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I thought I was protecting you." "By lying?" "By not being a burden." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Emma, baby, You could never be a burden. Never. Do you understand me? I started crying. Not the ugly parking lot crying, but the kind that comes from a deep, ancient place, the kind that's been waiting years to be released. I need you to come home, she said. Not forever, just for a few days. Let me take care of you. Let me be your mother. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I drove to Greenville that weekend. My childhood home looked exactly the same. A modest blue house with a wraparound porch and my mother's obsessively maintained garden. My father was waiting on the porch swing, and when he saw me, he stood up so fast he nearly tripped. He wrapped me in a hug that smelled like sawdust and Old Spice, and I felt 6 years old again. My girl, he said into my hair. My brave girl. We spent the weekend talking. Really talking. I told them everything. The diagnosis, the treatments, the fear, the isolation, the wedding. My mother cried. My father got angry, not at me, but for me, at a world that would make his daughter feel like she had to suffer alone. On Sunday morning, my mother and I sat on the porch with coffee, watching the sun burn off the morning fog. I saw the video, she said, the whole thing. Mom, that girl, Sarah, she was cruel to you. She didn't know. She should have. A real friend pays attention. She paused, sipping her coffee. But I also understand why you didn't tell her. Why you didn't tell any of us. You've always been that way. Even as a little girl, you'd fall and scrape your knee and just quietly go clean it up. Never wanted to be any trouble. I don't know how to be any other way. You learn. You start asking for what you need. You start taking up the space you deserve. You start believing that your pain matters just as much as anyone else's joy. What if people leave? Then they were never your people to begin with. When I got back to Columbia Sunday night, there was a package waiting at my door, no return address. Inside was a leather journal with a note tucked into the first page. Emma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been going to therapy, real therapy, not just the crisis kind after the video went viral. I'm trying to understand why I was so blind to your pain, why I prioritized image over substance, why I failed you. This journal is blank. I thought maybe you could fill it with all the things you couldn't say before, all the anger, all the hurt, all the truth you've been carrying alone. You don't have to share it with anyone. It's just for you. I'm sorry isn't enough. I know that. But I'm going to spend the rest of our friendship, if you'll give me another chance, proving that I can do better, that I can be better. Still here, still trying. Sarah. I held the journal for a long time, running my fingers over the smooth leather cover. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Part of me wanted to fill every page with rage. Instead, I opened it and wrote one sentence. My name is Emma Crawford, and I'm learning how to take up space. What's one truth you've been afraid to say out loud? Sometimes typing it in a comment is the first step. You don't have to suffer alone either. 4 months later, I stood in front of a different mirror, in a different dress, in a different body. Not different because I'd lost weight. I hadn't, not significantly. The steroids had done their damage, and my relationship with my reflection was still a work in progress. Different because I'd finished chemotherapy. Different because my hair was growing back in silver-streaked patches that I'd stopped trying to hide under wigs and scarves. Different because when I looked at myself now, I saw a survivor instead of an apology. The dress was burgundy, soft and flowing, something I'd chosen for myself without asking anyone's opinion. I was attending a benefit gala for the Cancer Center, and Dr. Patel had asked if I'd be willing to share my story. Not the viral video version, the real version. I'd said yes without hesitation. Younger Emma, the one who'd stood in that sage-green bridesmaid dress 6 months ago, would never have believed it. Tyler picked me up at 7. He'd become my unofficial +1 to things I was still learning to navigate alone. Not romantic, we'd maintained that boundary, but something better. Chosen family. You look powerful, he said when I opened the door. I feel terrified. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. The gala was held at the Columbia Museum of Art. The galleries transformed into elegant event spaces, ice sculptures, string quartet. People in formal wear, sipping wine and pretending they understood the abstract art on the walls. I saw familiar faces scattered throughout the crowd. Nurses from the cancer center. Other patients I'd met during treatment. Dr. Patel, stunning in emerald green, holding court with a group of donors. And in the corner, standing alone with a glass of champagne she wasn't drinking, was Sarah. My breath caught. We'd been texting, carefully, tentatively, rebuilding something that looked different from what we'd had before. She'd been showing up consistently, without fanfare, sending articles she thought I'd like, asking questions that showed she was actually listening to the answers. But we hadn't seen each other in person since that day at my apartment. She saw me at the same time. Our eyes met across the room, and something silent passed between us. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But acknowledgement. The recognition that we were both different people now, both doing the work. She lifted her glass slightly in greeting. I nodded back. "You okay?" Tyler asked beside me. "Yeah, I think I am." The speeches began after dinner. A cancer center administrator talked about treatment advances. A young survivor spoke about his journey through childhood leukemia. A surgeon discussed new surgical techniques. Then Dr. Patel took the microphone. "Our final speaker tonight is someone who taught me that courage isn't always loud," she said. "Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's choosing to survive when survival feels impossible. Sometimes it's learning to take up space after a lifetime of making yourself small. Emma Crawford, would you join me?" My legs felt unstable as I walked to the podium. 200 faces turned toward me. The spotlight was blinding. I gripped the edges of the lectern to steady myself. 6 months ago, I began, and my voice only shook a little. I went viral for all the wrong reasons. A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. Some people nodded. A few whispered to their companions. A video captured me at my lowest moment, confronting someone who'd hurt me, revealing a truth I'd been hiding for months. That video made me famous for about 15 minutes. People called me brave. They called me inspiring. They turned my private pain into a public narrative I never asked for. I paused, scanning the audience. Sarah had moved closer, standing at the back of the room, tears already streaming down her face. But here's what that video didn't show. It didn't show the 6 months before that moment. It didn't show me sitting in this very building, receiving a diagnosis that felt like a death sentence. It didn't show me going through treatment alone because I'd convinced myself that needing help made me weak. It didn't show all the ways I'd learned to make myself invisible, to be convenient, to never ask for too much or take up too much space. My hands were shaking now, but I kept going. I learned early that there was an acceptable amount of space I was allowed to occupy. As a woman, as someone whose body didn't fit conventional standards, as someone who was taught that being low maintenance was a virtue. So when I got sick, when I became inconvenient by default, I just disappeared. I removed myself from my own life because I didn't think I deserved to burden anyone with my existence. I saw Dr. Patel nodding, her expression fierce with understanding. That wedding video? That wasn't my moment of strength. That was my moment of breaking. Of finally being so exhausted from carrying everything alone that I couldn't hold it anymore. And yes, it exposed someone else's cruelty. But it also exposed my own. The cruelty I'd been directing at myself for years. I looked directly at Sarah now. The person who hurt me at that wedding. She was my best friend, and she failed me in ways that were unforgivable. But I'd also been failing myself for much longer. I'd been telling myself that my needs didn't matter, that my pain wasn't worth acknowledging, that I should just be grateful anyone tolerated me at all. My voice cracked, but I pushed through. I'm standing here tonight not because that video made me brave. I'm standing here because I survived. Because I learned that taking up space isn't selfish. It's survival. Because I stopped apologizing for existing in a body that's been through war and bears the scars of it. Because I'm finally learning that being difficult, being complicated, being human in all its messy glory isn't something to hide from. It's something to claim. The room was completely silent now. Cancer didn't make me strong. I was already strong. But cancer, and the way people responded to it, taught me that strength without space is just another form of disappearing. So I'm here to tell you that you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to need help without shame. You're allowed to exist in your full, complicated humanity without making yourself smaller to fit someone else's comfort. I gripped the lectern tighter, feeling the weight of every word. And to anyone out there suffering alone because you don't think you deserve support, because you're afraid of being a burden, because you've learned that your pain should be private and quiet and convenient, I see you. Your pain matters. Your life matters. You matter. Not in spite of how much space you take up, but because of it. Because of all of it. The applause started slowly, then built into something overwhelming. People stood. Dr. Patel was crying. Tyler was grinning at me from his seat. And Sarah was pushing through the crowd, making her way toward the stage. We met in the hallway outside the gallery, away from the noise and attention. She looked different too. Smaller somehow, but in a way that suggested she'd stripped away pretense rather than diminished herself. "Emma," she started, and then stopped, words failing. "I meant what I said in there," I told her, "about you failing me. About it being unforgivable." She nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "I know. But I also meant what I said about failing myself. I made it easy for you to overlook me. I trained everyone in my life not to ask too many questions, not to look too closely. I can't blame you for following the rules I established. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. But it gives me perspective." We stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment, the sound of the gala muffled through the walls. "I don't know if we can be friends again," I said finally. "Not the way we were before." "I know. But maybe we can be something new, something more honest, something that doesn't require either of us to be smaller than we are." Sarah wiped her face, mascara smudged but not caring. "I'd like that. I'd like to try. It's going to take time, and work, and me being difficult sometimes." "Good. You should be difficult. You've earned it." I almost smiled. "That's not how earning works." "Then you've claimed it. You've claimed the right to be difficult and complicated and fully human. And I'm going to show up for all of it. The good days and the bad days and the days when you need to tell me I'm fucking up. Because that's what real friends do." "Real friends," I repeated, testing the words. "If you'll have me." I thought about the journal she'd given me, now filled with months of truth-telling. I thought about her texts, the consistent showing up even when I didn't respond right away. I thought about her sitting in therapy, doing her own work, not just to win me back, but to become someone worthy of being chosen. "I'll think about it," I said. Not yes, but not no. Room for possibility. She nodded, accepting it. "That's more than I deserve." 2 weeks later, I had my final post-treatment scan. Dr. Patel's face when she read the results told me everything before she spoke. "No evidence of disease," she said, and those 4 words rearranged my entire world. I sat in that examination room, wearing another humiliating paper gown, and felt something I hadn't let myself feel in almost a year. Hope. Not hope that life would return to normal. That version of normal was gone forever. But hope that I could build something better, something truer, something that didn't require me to shrink myself to fit. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you live," Dr. Patel said simply. "You take up space, you make noise, you exist loudly and unapologetically. You survive, Emma, and then you thrive." I called my mother first, then Tyler. Then, after a moment of hesitation, Sarah. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Hey, how are you?" "I'm cancer-free." The sound she made was half sob, half laugh. "Oh my God, Emma, oh my God." "Yeah, Can I come over? Can I bring champagne and terrible reality TV and just sit with you? I looked around my apartment, at Milo sleeping on the couch, at the journal Sarah had given me, now dog-eared and full, at the life I'd built in the rubble of everything that had fallen apart. Yeah, I said, you can come over. She arrived an hour later with champagne, Thai food, and a playlist titled Songs for Taking Up Space. We sat on my living room floor, eating pad Thai straight from the containers, and she told me about her marriage, how it was harder than she'd expected, how therapy was helping them navigate the reality versus the fantasy, how she was learning that perfection was a prison. I told her about Tyler, about my parents, about the speaking engagements I'd been asked to do, about the blog I'd started, chronicling survival in all its ugly, beautiful, complicated glory. You're different, she said, studying me in that direct way she'd learned in therapy. So are you. Do you think we can really do this? Build something new? I thought about the girl I'd been at her wedding. The one who'd made herself small, who'd carried her pain silently, who'd believed that being easy to love was the same thing as being loved. I thought about the woman I was now. Scarred and strong and still learning, but finally taking up space. I think we can try, I said. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. 3 months later, I stood in front of another mirror. Not for a wedding or a gala, but for myself. My hair had grown back in uneven tufts, silver threading through the brown. My body still carried the evidence of treatment, the weight, the scars, the changes that would never fully reverse. But when I looked at my reflection now, I didn't see something to apologize for. I saw a survivor, a fighter, a woman who'd learned that taking up space wasn't selfish. It was sacred. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Coffee this weekend? Want to hear about your next speaking gig? Another from Tyler. Proud of you, space taker. Another from my mother. Love you, brave girl. I looked at myself one more time, meeting my own eyes in the mirror with something that felt startlingly like love. My name is Emma Crawford, I said out loud to my reflection, and I'm done making myself small. The words echoed in the empty room, but they didn't feel empty. They felt like a promise, like a beginning, like freedom. This is where Emma's story ends, but yours doesn't have to. What space have you been afraid to claim? What truth have you been afraid to speak? Drop it in the comments below. Sometimes the first step to taking up space is just saying, I'm here, I matter, I'm done shrinking. And if this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because we all deserve to exist loudly, unapologetically, and fully. Thank you for being here, for witnessing Emma's journey, for taking up space in your own life. You matter, all of you, every complicated, messy, beautiful part.